Have you ever watched a movie and found yourself squinting? Not because you were confused, not because you were moved, but because you literally could not see. That happened to me with the 2026 Sense and Sensibility trailer. It's Austen. It's supposed to be candlelight and longing. Instead, I'm leaning forward, straining to make out faces. Every color drained to a kind of tasteful mud. The whole thing dark and gray and washed out in a way that felt very deliberate. And I had this thought, why does every period film now look like it was shot at the bottom of a well? So today, that's what we're unpacking. Why are Austen movies so dark now? What is that darkness actually saying? Because I promise you, it is saying something about class, about taste, about who gets invited into the story and who gets left out in the dark. Welcome to Lady Susanna. Join me for tea as we decode what's really happening beneath the surface of the films you love, the hidden language of money, taste, class, and status that most people never notice, but everyone feels. To understand where we are now, we need to remember where we started. Picture the 1995 Sense and Sensibility. What color do you see? Golden rooms, grass that actually looks green, faces you can read from across the screen. Bright and chaotic and alive. Even when the palette was moody, you could always see the world was habitable. Now look at the 2026 trailer. Everything is slate blue and gray-brown. Rooms are lit by what feels like a single taper candle 3 rooms away. Dresses fold into walls because they're almost the same color as the walls. Faces emerge from the dark for a moment and then dissolve back into it. This is not a small stylistic choice. This is a completely different philosophy about what Austen should feel like. And I want to talk about why that philosophy became dominant and what it cost. Because here's the thing. That darkness is not an accident. It's not a lighting budget problem. It's a message. And to understand what it's saying, we need a concept I want to introduce. Aesthetic distance. Aesthetic distance is when a film uses its visuals to hold you slightly away from it. Not cold, not unwelcoming, but at a distance, like looking at something through glass rather than being able to touch it. The image is beautiful, but it reminds you are in the presence of art. You don't sink into it, you stand before it. You feel aesthetic distance in galleries, standing in front of a painting that is extraordinary but untouchable. You feel it in restaurants where the lighting is so dim and the portions so small that you instinctively lower your voice because the room itself tells you this is serious. This is not dinner. This is cuisine. You feel it increasingly in prestige cinema, and especially in Austen adaptation recently. In the 2026 trailer, aesthetic distance shows up in the darkness itself. The gloom is not just atmospheric, it's a signal. It says this is not a Sunday comfort watch. This is a film that takes itself seriously. It won't charm you with golden interiors or easy beauty. It will make you work for it. When we see a film that looks like a painting you would see in a museum, our cultural reflexes kick in. We think important, serious, probably awards material. We approach it more carefully, more respectfully, more reverently. That's aesthetic distance doing its job. It codes the film as high status before you've even heard a word of dialogue. Which brings me to the second concept I want to introduce, the prestige palette. Think of it this way. An understated, expensive outfit doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. The restraint is the message. I don't need to try. The prestige palette works exactly the same way. Cool tones, drained color, shadows in every corner. They say this film belongs in the serious conversation. It doesn't need to dazzle you. It doesn't need to delight you. It's here to be respected. And once prestige films started winning awards with this look, the formula became impossible to ignore. Darkness stopped being just a lighting choice. It became a language. If you want to be taken seriously, you light your film like a Vermeer painting, not like a BBC Sunday special. You trade warmth for gravitas. You trade color for credibility. The trailer is bathed in that language, and I understand why they chose it. But here is where it gets really interesting. When Ang Lee made Sense Sensibility in 1995, the golden warmth of that film was also a kind of wealth, just a different kind. It says this world is worth inhabiting. These women are allowed beauty. Their lives have texture and pleasure, even in the middle of suffering. It gave you something to be nourished by, not just impressed by. You could feel the warmth of those rooms. You wanted to be inside them. Which leads me to our third concept for this video. Chromatic modesty is when a film deliberately drains its color. Not because it's historically accurate, but because it wants to signal something. That color would be too much, too pretty, too easy. That this film has more important things to say than, look at this beautiful dress. Chromatic modesty. And here's what makes this worth questioning. Because Regency England was not gray. Silk and wool were dyed in jewel tones, deep reds, warm greens, dusty golds. Wallpapers were bold. Fireplaces were the social centers of the room, and the cast real, generous, warmth. The world Austen wrote in had color, specific, deliberate, class-coded color. What a woman wore, what shade it was, how rich the fabric, all of it was legible. All of it meant something. When a film strips all of that away and gives you gray on brown, it is making a statement. It is saying, we are not here for prettiness. We are here for truth. But that statement implies something troubling. That beautiful things are shallow. That if you allow pleasure into the image, you've somehow compromised the integrity of the story. Colors get treated like decorations. And decorations in the world of prestige filmmaking is something serious art rises above. The people who push back against this, who notice that the colors have been drained, who knows what Regency fabrics actually looks like. They're not asking for a neon fantasy. They're not asking for Bridgerton. They're pointing out that the film has made a contemporary taste performance and called it historical honesty. That the chromatic modesty is less about accuracy and more about flattering a specific audience, telling them this version is for you. You are too sophisticated for spectacle. You are above all that. Chromatic modesty, in other words, is prestige cinema's way of choosing its audience and closing the door on everyone else. But here's the thing, that door isn't just aesthetic, it's practical. And this is the part that no one talks about. Visibility privilege. Visibility privilege is simple. If you have a well-calibrated screen, or you're sitting in a dark cinema with excellent projection, the dark Regency look is genuinely stunning. Every shadow has texture. Every candlelit face is precise and deliberate. You see everything the cinematographer intended, and it's beautiful. But if you're watching on a laptop in a lit room, less than optimal. That same palette becomes something close to unwatchable. Faces disappear, expressions vanish. You lose the micro-acting in someone's eyes, the detail in the costume, the spatial relationship between characters in a room. You are not watching the same film. You are watching a darker, flatter, significantly worse version of it. This is a hidden class line drawn by the camera itself. The prestige palette assumes a certain viewing setup. It is calibrated for conditions that cost money, good screens, good rooms, and good projection. And everyone else pays what I call the plainness tax, the invisible toll extracted from viewers whose environment doesn't meet the film's unstated requirements. The darker the image, the higher the tax. And suddenly, serious cinema and cinema for everyone are no longer the same thing. The darkness that reads as intimacy on a cinema screen reads as carelessness everywhere else. The aesthetic distance that signals prestige to one viewer signals exclusion to another. What feels like art in one room feels like technical failure in the next. This matters specifically for Austen because Austen has never belonged to an elite. Her readers have always included everyone. Girls reading in small bedrooms, women watching on Sunday evenings about their own lives, the social constraints, the limited money, the pressure to marry well, the cost of feeling too much. That is not a niche experience. That has always been the point. When the image becomes something only certain screens can unlock, a story that was never meant for an exclusive audience begins to get one. The darkness that was supposed to signal seriousness ends up doing something else entirely. It starts to signal that this version wasn't made for all of you. And that brings us to the deepest question of all. Not just who can see this film, but what the film is asking us to look at. Here I want to introduce our fifth concept, aesthetic hunger. Aesthetic hunger is what happens when the women in a film are visually drained. No warmth on their faces, no color in their clothes, no ease or comfort anywhere in their world. While at the same time the camera lingers with tremendous care and precision on their suffering. Their bodies are dim, their longing is luminous, their pain is the entire spectacle. Watch the 2026 trailer with this in mind. Notice which moments the camera loves. Eleanor breaking, Marianne devastated, the Dashwood women frightened, diminished, helpless. These scenes are exquisitely lit. Every crumpled expression, every restrained tear, every moment of humiliation is framed like a portrait. The camera is completely, devotedly present for their pain. Now ask yourself, where is that same care given to their joy, their pleasure, their ease? Where is the scene where they are beautiful and know it? Where the light says these women are not just here to suffer beautifully? That absence is aesthetic hunger. It's what happens when the visual system treats women's pain as worthwhile content and their everything else as fillers. And the dark Regency look makes aesthetic hunger almost inevitable. Because when you drain the world of color, when you remove warmth and texture and visual pleasure from every frame, the only thing left that glows, the only remaining light source, is suffering. The result is a film that is extraordinarily generous with these women's grief and almost completely stingy with their delight. And we should ask that question honestly, not as a criticism of the cast, not as a criticism of the story, but as a question of the gaze behind the camera. Does Dark Regency honor these women's full humanity, their wit, their pleasure, their power, the moment when life feels worth having? Or is it something else, a very refined, very tasteful, very aesthetically sophisticated gaze that has learned to package women's suffering as luxury, that has found a way to consume their pain and called it art? That distinction matters, and it is worth sitting with. We are not just talking about color grading or cinematography, or whether someone preferred the 1995 version. We are talking about what a film believes these women are for. Whether their inner lives, their full, complicated, luminous inner lives are the subject of their stories, or whether their suffering is simply the most photogenic thing about them. That is the question the Dark Regency look forces us to ask, and I don't think enough people are asking it. So I want to end with something for you to actually do, not just think about. Watch the trailer one more time, and while you watch, ask yourself one question. At what exact moment does the dark palette stop feeling like intimacy and start feeling like strain? That moment is specific. It's different for everyone. That exact moment is where aesthetic distance becomes exclusion, where the prestige palette becomes a wall. Find that moment and tell me in the comments where it lands for you, because I think it tells us something much bigger than whether we like this trailer. I think it tells us who this film has decided it's for, and whether the rest of us watching on our phones, in our lit rooms, on our ordinary screens, were ever really part of the conversation at all. If you want more conversations like this about class, taste, and the roles we get cast in, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next week.